Darth Vader was a symbol of fear, power, and absolute authority. As Supreme Commander of the Imperial Navy, his word was law, his commands unquestioned. Yet behind the mask, Vader wasn't just the Navy's leader, he was its harshest critic. It wasn't just incompetence that angered him. To understand Vader's hatred of the Imperial Navy, we must first look back to the Clone Wars, where Anakin Skywalker fought a very different kind of war. A war that shaped his expectations and planted the seeds of his discontent. Before he became a Sith Lord, Anakin Skywalker was a hero of the Republic. During the Clone Wars, he served as a Jedi general, commanding fleets of ships and leading soldiers into battle. But Anakin wasn't like most Jedi. Where others hesitated, bogged down by Jedi philosophy or bureaucratic constraints, Anakin thrived on decisive action. His leadership style was hands-on, almost reckless, but it earned him the undying loyalty of his troops. Clone Captain Rex, one of Anakin's closest allies, once said that Anakin Skywalker led by example. Anakin wasn't content to sit in a command chair barking orders. He was in the cockpit of a starfighter, breaking enemy blockades and leading daring assaults. This hands-on approach created bonds with his soldiers and established a level of trust and respect that was rare in the Republic Army. Anakin's battlefield successes often came from his ability to adapt. He didn't wait for approval from the Jedi Council or the Republic Senate. He made decisions in the moment, often relying on instinct and improvisation. And while this approach won battles, it also clashed with the Republic's bureaucratic machinery. Anakin hated inefficiency, red tape, and anything that slowed the Republic's war machine. These frustrations would only grow after his fall to the dark side. When Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader, he was thrust into a new role: Supreme Commander of the Imperial Navy. At first glance, this position seemed like a perfect match for Vader. The Empire's Navy was the largest military force in the galaxy, boasting fleets of Star Destroyers, countless TIE fighters, and an organizational structure designed for domination. But there was a fatal flaw in the Imperial Navy that Vader could never overcome: its rigid hierarchy and reliance on fear. The Imperial Navy wasn't built for efficiency, it was built to maintain control. Admirals rose through the ranks not because of their tactical brilliance, but because of their loyalty to the Emperor. Bureaucracy choked the Navy's operations, with officers more concerned about maintaining their rank than achieving results. And while fear was an effective motivator, it also bred paranoia and hesitation. Few officers dared to take initiative, fearing that a single misstep could cost them their lives, especially when Darth Vader was watching. For Vader, this was an unbearable contrast to his time as a Jedi general. During the Clone Wars, he had been surrounded by clones who were bred for loyalty and competence. They acted with precision, obeyed orders without question, and were willing to die for the Republic. But more than that, they trusted him, and he trusted them. The Imperial Navy offered no such trust. Its officers were careerists, vying for power and recognition in the shadow of the Emperor. Admirals like Kendall Ozzel and Firmus Piet exemplified this dysfunction. Ozzel's arrogance and incompetence led to the failure at Hoth, and Vader executed him without hesitation. Piet, though more competent, was always walking on eggshells, terrified of making a mistake. Vader's frustration wasn't just about individual failures, it was about the system. The Navy's rigid structure stifled initiative, and its officers' fear of failure often led to hesitation in critical moments. To Vader, this was unacceptable. As someone who thrived on decisive action, he saw the Navy's bureaucracy as a weakness that undermined its potential. The Grand Admirals were the Emperor's elite, 12 officers handpicked by Palpatine to oversee the Empire's military strategy. In theory, they were the best and brightest minds in the Imperial Navy. In practice, they were a mixed bag of strategists, researchers, and political loyalists. And for Vader, they were a constant source of irritation. Unlike Vader, who commanded respect through sheer power and authority, the Grand Admirals often relied on their status and connections to maintain control. This dynamic led to frequent clashes. While some Grand Admirals like Thrawn earned Vader's grudging respect through their tactical brilliance, others were little more than bureaucrats in white uniforms. Vader's disdain for them was palpable, and his presence often served as a reminder that their power was not absolute. One particular point of tension was Vader's authority to bypass the Admiralty entirely. As Supreme Commander, his orders were second only to the Emperor's, which meant that he could override even the Grand Admirals. This created resentment within the Navy's upper echelons, further fueling the disconnect between Vader and the institution he was supposed to lead. Vader's frustrations with the Imperial Navy weren't just the result of its inherent flaws, they were by design. Palpatine crafted the Navy not as a model of military efficiency, but as an instrument of fear and control. The massive Star Destroyers, while powerful, were more symbolic than practical. Their size and firepower were meant to intimidate, not necessarily to win wars. Sector groups, with their rigid hierarchies and thousands of ships, were less about swift tactical response and more about maintaining a presence that could crush rebellion before it started. For Palpatine, the Navy's inefficiency wasn't a weakness, it was a feature. A fractured chain of command and the constant paranoia among officers ensured that no single admiral could rise to challenge him. The Navy's culture of fear mirrored the Sith's own philosophy. Power flowed only from the top, and loyalty was enforced through dominance, not respect. This philosophy clashed directly with Vader's own ideals, shaped by his experiences in the Clone Wars. As Anakin Skywalker, he had relied on camaraderie, adaptability, and trust to win battles. But as Darth Vader, he was forced to lead a Navy that embodied everything he had fought against, a machine designed to obey blindly, not to think or innovate. Palpatine's design also served another purpose: to isolate Vader. By surrounding him with a fleet of officers too afraid to challenge him and too incompetent to execute his vision, the Emperor ensured that Vader's frustrations would boil over, keeping him firmly rooted in the dark side. Every failure, every delay deepened Vader's rage and reinforced his dependence on his master. In response to the Navy's inefficiency, Vader created Death Squadron, a fleet that answered only to him. Centered around the massive Super Star Destroyer Executor, Death Squadron was unlike any other force in the Imperial Navy. It operated with a singular purpose: to hunt down the Rebel Alliance and destroy them. Death Squadron reflected Vader's ideals. It was efficient, ruthless, and entirely loyal to its commander. The officers who served in Death Squadron knew the stakes. They either performed or perished. This level of accountability ensured that the fleet operated at peak efficiency, but it also created an atmosphere of fear that mirrored the larger Imperial Navy. For Vader, Death Squadron was more than just a fleet. It was an extension of his will, a tool to achieve his personal goals. Whether it was hunting Luke Skywalker or crushing Rebel cells, Death Squadron allowed Vader to bypass the Navy's bureaucracy and operate on his terms. But even this fleet couldn't erase his frustration with the larger system. There was another, deeper reason for Vader's hatred of the Imperial Navy, one that had little to do with strategy or efficiency. The Navy, with its flaws and failures, was a constant reminder of Anakin Skywalker's past. The parallels between the Imperial Navy and the Republic's bureaucracy were impossible to ignore. Both systems were plagued by inefficiency, corruption, and a lack of accountability. For Vader, this was a bitter irony. As a Jedi, he had fought to preserve the Republic, only to see its flaws replicated in the Empire. The Navy's shortcomings forced him to confront the ghost of Anakin Skywalker, the idealistic general who believed he could fix a broken system. And just like the Republic, the Imperial Navy proved to be beyond saving. This internal conflict fueled Vader's rage. Every failure, every act of incompetence was a reminder of his own failures as a Jedi. It wasn't just the Navy he hated, it was himself. As a Jedi general, he had led with conviction and decisiveness. As a Sith Lord, he demanded the same from the Empire's Navy and was constantly disappointed. The Imperial Navy was a reflection of everything Vader despised: bureaucracy, fear, and failure. But it was also a reflection of himself, his own inability to escape the mistakes of Anakin Skywalker. And in the end, that may have been the greatest tragedy of all. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and drop your thoughts on Vader and the Imperial Navy in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, may the dark side be with you.